Greetings, class. In this installment, we're going to talk about the concept of a BATNA. That's B-A-T-N-A, BATNA, that you have been exposed to in your book, Getting to Yes. BATNA, BATNA, is an acronym for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement. And before we get to discussing it, let me give a brief definition. So, the best alternative to a negotiated agreement is pretty much what it sounds like. In negotiation, we try to reach agreements. We don't always reach agreements. So, what is the alternative now that you've been in a negotiation? What is your alternative to that? What are the things that can happen? And so it's the identification of the alternatives, which of those is the best. So one of the examples that we've used kind of regularly in class for talking about negotiations has been the transaction between a buyer and seller with a used car. One of the reasons I use this used car transaction, and not so much the used car salesman, which is, you know, the happy person on the car lot, like, what will it take to get you into this car today? But like the stranger to stranger, like an individual, they're selling their car, is that we imagine this in general as being the kind of transaction where we're not considering a relationship. It's strictly the negotiation. You want to buy a car, somebody wants to sell a car, you're interested in their car, you check their car out, and you've got some ideas about what you think the car is worth, what you're willing to pay for it. If you reach an agreement with the person, that's great, but aside from buying the car, you don't have any other considerations. So we're just thinking about this purely in economic terms, right? It's purely substantive success. We don't really care about the process. If you walk into somebody's house and they start shouting at you, you're probably gonna not look at their car at all. Somebody's got, signs in their front yard that show that they support the wrong political candidate. You'll probably go ahead and ignore that, not care about what they think about anything, just decide whether or not you like the car or not. If it's too offensive, then you won't stick around, right? Emotional satisfaction. Look, you're either buying it or not. There's not a whole lot there, right? So BATNA is really about the substantive concerns, and so we use the transaction, buying and selling a car, to really get down to these economic terms, right? Whatever the car is, maybe you've looked it up on Kelley Blue Book, maybe you've done other research, maybe you have mechanics that are friends, but you've done your homework, you've come up with an idea. This is what this car is worth based upon how many miles it has on it and so forth. You'll take a test drive, try to figure out like if you think it has other problems or something. But let's just go ahead and have this hypothetical car. I don't even have a brand in mind, but let's just say somebody has listed a car that's the make and model you like, and they're trying to sell it for $10,000. You like that it's listed high, you think that you'd like to pay about $8,000 for it, right? So you've come up with kind of your price point. Person's asking 10, you're thinking like you'd actually like to buy it for 8. Take your test drive, you get back, you decide it's in good shape. And so you go ahead and you've offered $7,500, right? And in your mind, you'd like to get it for 8,000, but you'd be willing to go as high as 8,500. Okay? So you've kind of got this way of thinking about what flexibility you have, right? What's your settlement range? If you were driving and the person said, you know what, I really need to get rid of this car, $5,000 and it's yours, like that's even better, right? You'd get it for less, right? So you have a range there, but you decide that if you go too low with your offer, you might offend the person and then they won't want to negotiate with you, right? So the buyer has a settlement range, you've offered an amount, you're hoping for less than an amount, but you'd be willing to go as high, right? So you offer 7,500, you're hoping for 8,000, and you'd be willing to go as high as 8,500. Now, the seller also has a settlement range, right? And there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee that a seller actually has any flexibility on their price. Sometimes people list firm, sometimes they don't. When you offer $7,500, it's really putting the ball in their court. But we can assume that, given the context of doing business in the US, that the seller has an idea that they're asking 10,000, but that they'd be willing to accept less. Right? So let's just imagine that now the person says, all right, I'd like to get at least 9,000. And so I'm going to go ahead and hope for the best here. And you've offered 7,500. Now I'm going to say, well, I could do 9,500, right? Right. So a negotiation might proceed that way. The person says, well, I could offer a little bit more, but I can't offer that much. I could do 8,000. I do like the car, but that's as high as I'm willing to go. And then the seller's like, yeah, I really couldn't go any lower than 9,000. That's the lowest I can go, right? So there's still a gap there. Maybe the buyer, the potential buyer thinks, all right. Well, I was willing to go as high as 8,500, but that's really my final price. So what happens there, right? Right? There actually is no zone of potential agreement. The highest that the buyer is willing to pay is less than the lowest that the seller was willing to accept. This particular junction, they both can consider their best alternatives to a negotiated agreement. Right? If the buyer and the seller are stuck, there's not going to be a negotiated agreement. They're going to go away. The point of the tool here is that once you reach the part where there's the potential for impasse, and you can have a potential for impasse even if there is a zone for potential agreement, right? Because you may not have strategically played right. If your lowball offer is too low that the person doesn't come back because they don't take you seriously, for example, you may have been able to get to a price, but you may not have systematically gotten there. Anyway, so the buyer is now sitting on an offer that's not being accepted, and they're thinking about, all right, what's the reality? What's happening here, right? How long have I been looking for cars? What are the chances that I'll be able to find another car that I like, that's in this condition? How long will it take? Right? There might be some costs involved. Time can be a consideration. If you've been looking for something for a while, right? Maybe this is the 10th car you've gone to review, and you've made some offers, but the people just continued to ask for more than you were willing to pay. You might have to consider, like, everything that I've read, the research that I've done may have been accurate, right? It might have been an analysis that considered what was happening nationwide, but maybe there's just more demand for that specific vehicle that you're interested in the location you're in. So maybe the price is, maybe you're wrong, right? Right. One of the alternatives to negotiated agreement is that you could be wrong. You could keep trying and you could keep failing, right? But so the best alternative is the idea of really trying to set realistic expectations. If I don't buy this, what is most likely to happen? And when you start considering your best alternative, right, trying to be as accurate as possible, what is the likelihood that I'm going to be able to get what I'm looking for? What do I think I'm going to be able to get? And it's the same for the seller. If the seller knows that they just listed it today, you're the third person that's come for a test drive, and they're feeling like, there's more people coming to check it out tomorrow. They might feel really firm in all of that, but really thinking it through, right? If 3 people have come and said, this is as high as I'm willing to go, and really doing some considerate evaluation about, if I don't sell to this person, what is likely to happen, right? So that's pretty straightforward, but we can have more contextual detail, right? Let's say you're actually trying to buy the car or sell the car, either standpoint, with a purpose in mind, right? If I don't sell this car, then I can't buy the car I want, right? So there might be an impact there. There might be a reason why that sale is important. If I don't sell to this person today, then I won't have the money that I want to buy the car I want tomorrow. What are the chances that that car's going to go day after day without having its own buyer, right? Right? What is the opportunity cost that you're trying to build into this equation, right? In a legal setting, if you're in a mediation with me in small claims court, you have full control over the outcome. You do not have to pay anything to someone or accept payment from someone unless you've agreed upon it. But if you don't agree upon it in the small claims mediation, you're going to go to a judge, right? So the best alternative to the negotiated agreement in a court setting would be that you'll go to the judge and you will prevail in court. And if you're the plaintiff, you'll prevail in court. The judge will award you a judgment, and the next part would be that the person who's been found responsible would actually have the means and make the decision to follow through on the payment. So if you're weighing this consideration, right, the best thing is that happens. You'll then have a chance to consider about, what are my chances of winning in court? Nothing's ever 100%. How confident do I feel about my case? Right? But anyway, the tool here, best alternative to a negotiated agreement, should also be the most realistic alternative, right? Because if you're saying this is what would be best, well, you could say what would be best would be to walk out of the mediation and find a winning lottery ticket on the ground. But that's extremely unlikely, right? So being realistic about your possibilities here, if you start making the determination, my alternative to the negotiated agreement is that I might spend another month trying to find a car. Well, what's the opportunity cost associated with that? Or alternatively, if this is the first person who's come to, check out the car in 2 weeks, and you're not sure how long it'll be before another buyer comes along, again, there's an opportunity cost. If you wait 2 weeks to get the price that you wanted, you might make more money, but you might lose out in the meantime, right? So really having the thorough analysis about the alternative. If what you determine is that your alternative is risky and you're not sure you want to go with the alternative, you should consider that in terms of your bargaining power. You have offered something that wasn't accepted. You're at $8,500, which was the most that you thought you were willing to pay. The other person's come down to $9,000. Maybe going up another $250 is doable. Maybe it's not, right? If you get to the part where you've made the offer, the person says, sorry, that's just not good enough, you might come at them again, right? Give a little bit more explanation, right? Look, I honestly don't have more money. This is as much as I can afford. Try to give more explanation. The other person might give more explanation for why they're not budging. But again, thinking about what the alternatives to the current negotiation are. Evaluate the value of each alternative. How much is this alternative worth to me? And once you go through this process, you could very systematically reach a conclusion where you select the alternative that would provide the highest value to you. And if the alternative provides more value to you than moving beyond where you're at in the current negotiation, you can thank the person for their time and move on. If after determining your best alternative to a negotiated agreement, you realize that offering more might actually be better for you in the long run, even though you might be overpaying for the vehicle, it might save you money, then you should make the offer for more, right? Um, and the same for selling, right? Right? There are opportunity costs. If this transaction doesn't happen as hoped for, having a thorough evaluation of that is helpful as a tool. In the next clip, we'll talk about the worst alternative to a negotiated agreement. Thank you.